So today's practice was more of a ramp up. They weren't in pads, coming off an off day. I thought the tempo was good. I mean, I think they did a good job of. We're not in pads, working with each other. We got to, again, some 2-minute situations at the end that can happen. Any questions about the schedule this week? We're pads tomorrow, which is Thursday. We're pads, of course, Friday with Green Bay. We've kind of mapped out. I've had a chance to visit with Matt a couple times now. We've got the practice plans laid out, and we'll be ready to go.
Coach, after watching the film, what stood out about Bo to you?
A few things. Look, his decision-making was good. I felt he was comfortable in the pocket. Thought his locations were good. The number one thing to do with quarterback is lead your team. And, we scored. There's 2 plays where I think he can set his feet, and he's kind of backing up a little. We can clean that up. But I like the production with his group while he was in there, and ultimately that's their job. The whole group as a whole, when I'm talking about the 3 of them, we didn't have any sacks. There were a lot of positives.
Coach, you have a lot of healthy competition at receiver. You see a lot of these guys making plays. In your opinion, as you start to get toward the roster cut down, how do you evaluate what separates the guys on the back end?
It's a great question. Yesterday we spent a lot of time on personnel. Sometimes the nod is kicking game related. Sometimes the nod might be experience. There's a lot that goes into it. And I agree with your first statement. More than I can recall anywhere, the depth and competition at that position group. I think we potentially have guys that may end up playing for another team, and so but it's still early in the process. But I think it's a real good question, and it's a reality of, just this camp right now. And these guys are working hard, and it's a good problem to have.
What do you think of some of the growth Jonah Ellis showed in his game Sunday?
Listen, there's some good tape with him. Those guys that are competing at that linebacker spot, Cody, there's a lot of good film to coach off of. I thought we played the run well. There's a number of things we got to clean up, but overall, I think it's good to get him. It's good to get all those guys out here, and then in that type of setting where we're actually tackling.
With Bo starting Sunday, does that have any influence on how you do reps through the practice week or on Friday next week?
Let's wait till this thing flies over. It kind of falls in line with what we've been doing all of camp. In other words, last week, Stiddy, took the week's worth of ones and then into the game, and kind of following that same process that we've done all the way up till now. And so, all 3 of these guys are going to get a ton of work this week and a lot of work against Green Bay. At times we may be with a certain group against a different group at Green Bay, but we can't control that, and I don't think Matt or I are really concerned with that, So I don't think there's a big change.
How do you think Luke Wattenberg handled his first team reps at center?
Good. He's playing well, and I would also say Alex is as well, and Alex took snaps at guard, so those guys got a lot of work. I'm encouraged with both of those players. And the tape for both of those guys was really good.
You've talked a ton about the adjustment period that rookie wide receivers can take. How impressed have you been with Bailey in terms of how quickly he's been able to make himself a part of this offense?
He's smart. He's a little older. I would say you don't necessarily feel a rookie. And I say that just respectfully. He's a little older than most in his class. I like his transition and his body control for someone who's 6'4". Now he's low cut, and that helps him. Leggy receivers have a little bit more challenge, but he's a little bit more torso built. and that allows him to transition a little better. And so he put some good tape out there and continues to improve.
Sean, any concern with the physicality, short turnaround Friday and Sunday, anything different?
No, I think that's pretty normal. I think, with the Rams last year, we had a practice, then a day off. And the reason I say that is it's not just one group going. I mean, 90-some, 80-some players are getting reps in that practice. And so, and then the same thing with Sunday. It would be much different if we were saying, hey, the ones we're going to do all this work on Friday and all the work in the game, but we're really, chopping that up into thirds, and that's why it works okay.
Sean, Ellis at outside linebacker, what's the biggest kind of growth you've seen since the start?
Well, I think just look, his taking on the run, his run fits, and then developing, his rush plan. He was speed, and then he had a counter in college. You saw it, speed with a spin, and then it's adding power to that. It's developing his rush plan, and then certainly taking on the run, whether it's point of attack or backside.
When you talk to Matt LaFleur about the joint practice, what are some of the general things you discuss?
Well, it starts with just the periods. You start with all right, what do we want to get accomplished? We have a shell, maybe. Each of us have had a number of joint practices. We sent over a rough shell. Then they looked at it. He had some tweaks that we wanted to change. Because we're only with them once, if you recall last year with the Rams, we had 2 days. So one day we focused more on punt, the other day kick return. In this practice, we've got 2 periods. One will be KOR, kickoff, and the other will be punt return. And so we'll get those 4, field goal. And then there's just some nuances within the periods. And then logistically, things like, hey, where's their sideline? And we put them, the team that comes in, we put them in the middle, the neutral ground, as they would say in the South. They're in the middle, and then we would take this far sideline if it's a drill on this period, and we'd take the other far sideline. Just organizational things. And he's got a field map in front of him. He's looking at our facility, and so all of those things, so it would be the periods in practice of what we're doing, how we're rotating, and then the logistics in doing it.
When you're coaching,
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you provide updates on injuries? We just saw Jalen in the release today, but Lucas and Art on Sunday.
Yeah, so, look, Art had a concussion. The good news is, look, it's I don't want to use the word a mild concussion, but the symptom scores are better for him. There's a good chance that he won't go this week, and then we feel strongly he'll be ready to go next week. The next one was who?
Lucas.
Lucas should be fine. He's got a toe. We'll see how he is tomorrow. And then we have a number of guys that didn't play in the game. I don't want to go through them all, but we feel somewhat positive that all of them will be involved this week and getting work against Green Bay. And that's like I'm talking about 3 or 4 players.
when you're coaching situations like end game situation there, how much work does it take you to kind of get them to recalibrate their brains to where, like you're saying, sometimes an incompletion isn't a bad play and is better than that 2-yard pass?
Well, there's over 500 2-minute situations, and the first thing is when the drill starts, I think it's helpful if they know advantage who. If I put the ball on the 30 with 28 seconds left, need a touchdown, 1 timeout, advantage defense. So let's not have, in other words, we're going to defend that way to some degree. Now, if I put the ball on the 40, like I did today, I didn't give many timeouts, and they needed a field goal. Analytically speaking, it would probably be down the middle, maybe tilted a little towards the offense, if 35-yard line. And so understanding at the beginning of the drill. Now, at the end of the half, we eliminate the term gotta. We don't gotta do anything at the end of the half. We understand how much time's left. Last week, we got in a situation, our goal was to get the ball back. I used some timeouts. So we had time when they kicked off, and our goal there was field goal. Now our goal here was field goal, and both of those groups all of a sudden got within range with enough time, and now I'm recalibrating how do we score possibly and avoid overtime. So, but I think you have to repeat it over and over again, articulate it, so that they become comfortable with it. And ultimately, you want them thinking like you as best, and the whole team. If there's no timeouts and we need a field goal, we're ready for hurricane. And that's the run the field goal unit out there. And you might go a season without doing that, or you might go to Buffalo and do it at the end of the half and the end of the game. You just don't know. Some of these situations are going to come up 5 times in a year. Some of them might come up once in 5 years. And we spent a lot of time last week on no-brainer freeze, 4th down and short. I showed them a number of tape clips, and where it meant the difference. We're at Cincinnati. We're down on the 12. It's 4th and a yard and a half. We're down 3, 38 seconds left in the game, and this is going to go into overtime. And so we're going to kick this field goal this past weekend. We'll take the delay of the game and back it up, kick the field goal. It'll be tie. And yet in Cincinnati, we got them to jump. The very next play, we throw a touchdown to Colston, and we end up winning the game. And it kind of unfolded a little bit this week. I mean, it wasn't the end of the game. There was 5 minutes and change, but they jumped very shortly after we scored, and the game ended, and I think we were up 4. Now, if they don't jump, we kick the field goal, and we're still playing. It's tied, and so that was one situation that came up in the preseason, and then you can show film. I can think of 5 examples where we won the game because of that. And then let's not be on the other side of it. When they jumped, I turned to DJ and the defensive lineman and started yelling at them like it was them that jumped. And I just want them tuned into. There's so many of these games are won and lost. It's a 3-hour game in a unique situation, and if you handle it correctly, you give yourself a chance. And if you don't, then you end up probably on the losing end of some of those.
Sean, what did you see with Riley and Damari both got there together?
That was good. They got a lot of work. This week, Pat, we think will be back. So we'll push those guys back and forth. They're both playing well. That's the good news.
Sean,
Go ahead.
logistically, I know quarterback's always the big talk, but do you want to make starter decisions after this week, or does it still play out as you go into your
I think, look, there's some of those decisions that are easy and that we've made, that, in other words, I can tell you who the right guard's going to be. That's easy. All right. But I think we're having those discussions. I'll ask the question constantly in the staff meeting. If we're playing tomorrow, how do you see it? And if we're playing tomorrow, how do you see the final receiver cut down? If we're playing tomorrow, how do you see? We discuss those things, and pretty regularly. And then it gives you a better idea. At 53, you'd say realistically we might be on my paper up there, 44, and then this next 9. That's realistic at where we're at, and barring injury or things that can happen. So I think we're always talking about it, and then we're not afraid. Like, there's certain players that, look, I know exactly what I'm getting. I've seen it. Let's make sure we get more from this guy, because I know the evaluation I have on the other guy. And so trying to get those reps, trying to get those snaps with the right groups for guys that are part of that mix in competition, we spend a lot of time on that.
Did you mean Pat would play in the game this week? Or?
Pat will play in the game this week.
Sean,
That's all right, isn't it?
I just didn't know if he was playing at all.
over the course of the training camp, what growth have you seen from Riley Moss?
I'd say the one thing he does exceptionally well, he phases with the receivers well, and so it's hard. You don't see him out of position, or he's longer than you think, and so the ball's contested if it's caught. You've earned it. and so his length and his transition. At Iowa, they played a lot of quarters. His eyes were inside a lot, and there was a scheme. But you saw his hips and you saw his movement skills, and to see him now in some of the other defenses, maybe that you didn't have film on in college, I'd say his technique is good. He's long, and I'd say he's got really good instincts. If you oversplit with him, his leverage is going to be clean. If you undersplit, like there's some instinctual things that he does exceptionally well.
With Zach Wilson, obviously having played the most of those three guys in the NFL, I guess what have you seen him sort of taking the coaching that you want?
I felt his reps in the game were really good. I mean, number one, there's a poise because he's been there. And then I felt like he was real comfortable. Again, we were in and out of the huddle. There was no clock issue. I mean, all of that was smooth, but then his decision making, and he's aggressive. I like that he's going to take shots. He's got a good live arm. I thought he had a real good game, and I'm encouraged. I like what I'm seeing, and that's one of the pluses about bringing someone like him in here. That position's so important, and look, the focus on Bo, understandably so, is when you draft a quarterback in the first round, like every one of us recognizes the significance of getting that position settled and having that position who we feel like we can win with, and then because when that's unsettled, then it's tough on your team. And so, but I like the way he played, and I mean, you felt it on the sidelines. You felt, experience, just poise. Even in the timeout where we're going to try to draw them off sides, I gave him a hard time. Can your squeaky voice get these guys off sides? Like I just challenge him. I've never heard your hard count yet. Let's see. And then, so we did it. But it's a good group to work with, and I know the offensive coaches feel that way. I feel that way. I like where we're at right now, and that's encouraging for our team. That's encouraging for the team. Because when that's unsettled and maybe not as far along, then there's a lot of things you can do well, and yet the team sees that there's a ceiling maybe on what you can do.
Coach, with your first look at live reps, kickoff and kickoff cover, the new rule, what did you make of the body type, the personnel, the returner?
Yeah, I still think speed's going to be key because that happens quick. Getting into the hole happens quick. I'd say the backside pursuit, we were talking, Ben and Mike and Chris, the backside angles happen fast. And now we're in preseason, so I'm sure there's some schemes that teams are holding, or not necessarily showing. But I think catching that kickoff, and we saw a lot of conventional, then we saw a handful of 5-irons. But in the conventional kick, catching that with a forward body lean, different than catching a punt. But when you're catching a kickoff, man, you can't be catching it with the back foot planted. You've got to catch it with that forward body lean so you can get into that return. I think these holes and these openings, they're like, and so you got to get into them fast. You're still going to be looking at speed, and then you're going to be looking at IQ. And we saw the Kansas City game. And I think there was a lot of question as to what that rule was, and it ended up being a safety. So the IQ and the speed, those are going to be important.
And how much of a separator can that be for someone like Jalen Burger who showed that?
Yeah, listen, for all of these guys, you're trying to say, hey, what can they do if they? It's one thing to cut to 53, but then you're getting ready for Seattle. So when you cut to 53, you're talking about, is he active week 1 or inactive? And so you have a first vision and a second vision. All of that is discussed. All right, thank you guys.